Welcome back. Happy Monday. We are continuing through Romeo and Juliet. We finished the balcony scene last week, and today, Monday, we are going to talk about Act 2, Scene 3. And as we begin Act 2, Scene 3, we got a little bit into Scene 4 today, but I'm just going to keep this video to be all of Scene 3, and then we'll talk about the beginning of Scene 4 tomorrow as we read that whole scene. So, we've got a new character here, Friar Lawrence. He's not completely new because he's been mentioned, but we haven't seen him yet in the play. He was mentioned right here above, and you can see that on your screen. Romeo says, "Hence will I to my ghostly friar's close cell." Okay. Now, first of all, he's not a ghost. And secondly, he's not in jail. So when it says his cell, a cell can mean any small room. Now, Friar Lawrence is a friar. He's kind of like a monk. And Friar Lawrence is Romeo's spiritual advisor. That's why he says my ghostly friar, because ghostly, spiritual. He's somebody who's well respected in Verona. He's been influential to lots of people in both families and throughout town. But he's been an advisor for Romeo for a long time. This is the beginning. If you watched the bonus video last week, you know this is the beginning of the second day of the play. So it's early Monday morning. It's probably like 6 a.m. The sun is just barely starting to rise. Friar Lawrence enters, and as he does, he has a basket. In the basket, he's like collecting all these different plants and weeds, etc., from his garden. Now, as a friar, Friar Lawrence has devoted his life to his faith, devoted his life to the Catholic Church. And he lives in a small room at the church. That's what his cell is. He's taken a vow of poverty, so he's not doing any other job other than working for the church. And the one extravagance he has is that he has this big garden around his cell, okay? So he comes out, he's looking out at the morning, and he's kind of meditating, not like, you know, the typical what you might think of, but he's thinking really hard about plants and how they are similar to people, etc. So as we listen to this, we'll notice that and we'll point out some of those things. So here we go.
Scene 3, Friar Lawrence's cell. Enter Friar Lawrence with a basket.
The green-eyed morn smiles on the frowning night, checkering the eastern clouds with streaks of light, and flecked darkness like the drunkard reels from fourth day's path and Titan's fiery wheels. None, ere the sun advance his burning eye, the day to cheer and night's dank dew to dry. I must upfill this osier cage of ours with baleful weeds and precious juiced flowers. The earth, that's nature's mother, is her tomb. What is her burying grave? That is her womb. And from her womb, children of divers kinds, we sucking on her natural bosom find. Many for many, virtues excellent. None but for some, and yet all different. Oh, mickle is the powerful grace that lies in plants, herbs, stones, and their true qualities. For naught so vile that on the earth doth live, but to the earth some special good doth give. Nor aught so good, but strained from that fair use, revolts from true birth, stumbling on abuse. Virtue itself turns vice, being misapplied, and vice sometimes by action dignified.
All right. And then as you can see, this is where Romeo enters. And when he enters, he doesn't interrupt Friar Lawrence. And in fact, he doesn't even like get Friar Lawrence's attention. He just enters and listens for a moment before that, okay? So as we look at this, I just want to point out a couple things. First of all, he says, we don't quite have line 17 here, but lines 18 through 20 on here, plus 17. It says, For not so vile that on the earth doth live, but to the earth some special good doth give. So as he's thinking about these different plants that he grows and that exist, he says, there's nothing that is so vile, so evil, that it doesn't provide something good, something special to the earth, right? Everything has a purpose. And on the other hand, right here, as you can see, it says, nor aught so good, but strained from that fair use, revolts from true birth, stumbling on abuse. So there's also no plant or no thing that, if it's misused, nothing is all good either, right? So nothing is all evil. Everything has a purpose. But on the other hand, there's nothing that's just totally 100% good. Things can be abused if they are not used the way they're supposed to. And he says in 21:22 here, virtue itself turns vice being misapplied, and vice sometime by action dignified. This, he's bringing the plant idea to this metaphor about humanity. Virtue is moral behavior. When you're doing the right thing, you're doing something good, okay? And vice is the opposite. Vice is wickedness. Vice is doing something wrong. So it says, virtue itself turns vice being misapplied. Even if you're doing something that is supposedly the right thing to do, if you do it wrong or at the wrong time or in the wrong way, then maybe it turns out that that thing is not the right thing to do. And on the flip side, vice is sometimes dignified by your actions. So there might be some reason that doing the wrong thing or something wicked is actually justifiable, okay? It's going to be really interesting to take these two lines and to remember this as we continue the play. Virtue turns vice being misapplied, and vice sometimes by action dignified, okay? So Romeo enters and he starts listening, and Friar Lawrence goes back to the plants and he picks up a flower and he points out this example from nature. Within this weak flower, poison has residence and medicine power. So there's poison and medicine within this one plant. And the same is true for us. Virtue turns vice being misapplied, vice sometime by action dignified. Same thing with this flower. If you smell it, it's medicine. If you eat it, it's poison, okay? So that's gonna be his main point as he finishes this speech and Romeo interrupts him. Here we go.
Within the infant rind of this small flower, poison hath residence and medicine power. For this, being smelt with that part, cheers each part. Being tasted, slays all senses with the heart. Two such opposing kings encamp them still, in man as well as herbs. Grace and rude will, and where the worser is predominant, full soon the canker death eats up that plant.
Enter Romeo.
Good morrow, father.
Benedicite, what early tongue so sweet saluteth me? Young son, it argues a distempered head so soon to bid good morrow to thy bed. Care keeps his watch in every old man's eye, and where care lodges, sleep will never lie. But where unbruised youth with unstuffed brain doth couch his limbs, there golden sleep doth reign. Therefore, thy earthiness doth me assure thou art uproused with some distemperature. Or, if not so, then here I hit it right. Our Romeo hath not been to bed tonight.
Okay, so he's surprised, and Benedicite, he says, which is Latin. And he says there's only two reasons that a young man like you, Romeo, would be awake this early in the morning. Either thou art uproused with some distemperature. So either there's something wrong and you're troubled and you can't sleep, or you haven't been in bed tonight. And when Romeo says, it's true, I haven't been to bed at all, Friar Lawrence immediately assumes that he was with Rosaline, but we know that that's not the case. So let's continue.
That last is true. The sweeter rest was mine.
God pardon sin. Wast thou with Rosalind?
With Rosaline, my ghostly father. No, I have forgot that name and that name's woe.
That's my good son. But where hast thou been then?
I'll tell thee ere thou askest me again. I have been feasting with mine enemy, where on a sudden one hath wounded me that's by me wounded. Both our remedies within thy help and holy physic lies. I bear no hatred, blessed man, for lo, my intercession likewise steads my foe.
Be plain, good son, and homily in thy drift. Riddling confession finds but riddling shrift.
All right. So he says, where have you been? And Romeo gives this long answer that doesn't really answer the question. I've been feasting with my enemy. I was wounded and so were they. And so you need to help. And if you help, then you'll help me, but you'll also help my enemy. And Friar Lawrence says, dude, just spit it out. Okay. Riddling confession finds but riddling shrift. If you don't clearly tell me what's actually going on, I can't really help you. Riddling confession finds but riddling shrift. And so then Romeo does. He spits it out. He tells Friar Lawrence, okay, fine, here's the answer. And he asks Friar Lawrence to help him by doing something specific. Check it out.
Then plainly know my heart's dear love is set on the fair daughter of rich Capulet. As mine on hers, so hers is set on mine, and all combined, save what thou must combine by holy marriage. When and where and how we met, we wooed and made exchange of vow. I'll tell thee as we pass, but this I pray, that thou consent to marry us today.
So you caught it, right? Romeo's asking Friar Lawrence, will you perform the marriage ceremony for Juliet and I today? And Friar Lawrence, holy Saint Francis, he says. Saint Francis is one of the most famous Catholic saints. And among other things, he's the patron saint of the country of Italy. So kind of an appropriate one for Friar Lawrence to give a shout out to. He's surprised yet again by Romeo, but now instead of just Romeo's presence, he's surprised based on what Romeo is telling him, right? So holy Saint Francis, what a change is here. Oh my goodness. You were crying so much about Rosaline and now you've already moved on. You want to marry somebody else. He's really surprised. Let's hear how he expresses that.
Saint Francis, what a change is here. Is Rosalind that thou didst love so dear, so soon forsaken? Young men's love then lies not truly in their hearts, but in their eyes. Jesu Maria, what a deal of brine hath washed thy sallow cheeks for Rosaline. How much salt water thrown away in waste, to season love that doth not taste. The sun not yet thy sighs from heaven clears, the old groans ring yet in mine ancient ears. Lo, here upon thy cheek the stain doth sit of an old tear that is not washed off yet. If e'er thou wast thyself, and these woes thine, thou and these woes were all for Rosaline. And art thou changed? Pronounce these sentences then. Women may fall where there's no strength in men.
So he expresses some specific surprise to Romeo about how this is so fast, but he also gives some words of wisdom. He says, is Rosaline that you did love so dear, so soon forsaken? Young men's love then lies not truly in their hearts, but in their eyes, right? So he's kind of accusing Romeo of being taken away by Juliet's looks rather than anything real. Then at the very end, like it says here, maybe a little bit sexist, I don't know, but he says women may fall when there's no strength in men, right? Men are meant to support women. And if you, Romeo, are so, if you're so ruled by your emotions and you're jumping back and forth from woman to woman, then you're not strong, you're not consistent. You need to chill out a bit. And Romeo points out, you chides me, like you chastised me for loving Rosaline. And Friar Lawrence says, no, it's not because of loving her, it's for doting. It's because you were obsessed and it was one-sided, and that was the problem. But by the time we get to this scene, Friar Lawrence actually changes his mind about the whole wedding thing. He's surprised, he's taken aback. He doesn't want to do the wedding because this is so fast. But ultimately, he ends up changing his mind. So let's see why Friar Lawrence decides to perform the wedding after all.
Thou chidst me oft for loving Rosaline,
For doting, not for loving, pupil mine.
and badest me bury love.
Not in a grave to lay one in, another out to have.
I pray thee chide not. She whom I love now doth grace for grace and love for love allow. The other did not so.
Oh, she knew well, thy love did read by rote that could not spell. But come, young waverer, come go with me. In one respect, I thy assistant be. For this alliance may so happy prove to turn our household's rancor to pure love.
Oh, let us hence. I stand on sudden haste.
Wisely and slow. They stumble that run fast.
Exit.
All right, so Friar, I hope you caught it. Friar Lawrence changed his mind, and he says, this alliance may so happy prove to turn your household's rancor to pure love. Okay, so maybe this marriage will end the feud between the two families. It'll turn your household's rancor to pure love. Maybe you'll love each other. You won't be angry at each other anymore. The feud will be over. And Romeo's like, great, let's go. And Friar Lawrence, wisely and slow, they stumble that run fast. This is not advice for Romeo about moving around, about running. It's advice about life, right? Wisely and slow, he says. Now, in some film versions, I think they do this in the 96 version. It's pretty funny because Romeo like actually kind of trips on his way out of the scene. And then Friar Lawrence says this, wisely and slow, they stumble that run fast. But we know that it's a metaphor. And we know that Friar Lawrence, even though Friar Lawrence is going to help Romeo and Juliet, he's taken aback by how quickly this has come. So he's reminding Romeo of these words of wisdom. Wisely and slow, they stumble that run fast. Okay. They exit. That's the end of scene 3. And then tomorrow we will read scene 4. We see Benvolio and Mercutio, Romeo's best friends. They're hanging out, and it's probably 8 a.m. at the beginning of scene 4, and they're looking for him. They haven't seen Romeo since he ditched them at the party and then jumped over the wall for the balcony scene at the end of the party. And so we're going to begin scene. We barely started reading it today, but I'm going to cover it in tomorrow's video. So thank you so much for watching. Hope that helps. Make it a great day. Talk to you soon.